Manager offers food to pregnant homeless woman and then accuses her of theft. The Millionaire CEO's reaction was shocking. The cold, thin rain falling over the city that Tuesday night wasn't just water. It felt like a warning, a lament from the sky that pierced straight into Clara's bones. She walked slowly, shuffling her worn-out sneakers that no longer protected her feet from the damp puddles. At 24, her youthful face was hidden beneath the grime of the streets and the marks of suffering. But what drew the most attention was her enormous, heavy belly, carrying 8 months of life. Clara felt the weight of the world right there in that womb. Every step was a victory, and at the same time a risk. She hadn't had a real meal in 3 days. She survived on sips of water from gas station fountains and, when lucky, a piece of stale bread offered by some charitable soul. Charity that became increasingly rare as her appearance deteriorated. People on the street tend to look away from misery, as if it were contagious. She hadn't been born on that cold pavement. Clara remembered having a key in her pocket, a roof over her head, a husband who loved her. But life, sometimes, is like a house of cards on a windy day. First came the layoff, then the sudden death of her partner in a workplace accident that justice never compensated, and finally the eviction notice. Widowhood and destitution arrived hand in hand, pushing her into invisibility. But that night, the hunger changed pitch. It was no longer the hollow rumbling in her stomach she had grown almost used to. It was a sharp pang, a dizziness that made her legs tremble. The baby kicked, hard, demanding. Clara placed a hand on her belly, an instinctive gesture of protection. "Hold on, my son. Mama is going to find something," she whispered, her voice rough and dry. That's when she saw it. The golden, warm, inviting lights of Avenue 75. It was one of those places where a single meal cost more than Clara used to earn in a month of work. The smell of roasted meat and fine herbs escaped through the revolving door, hitting Clara like a punch. Her dignity, which she tried to keep intact even while sleeping on cardboard, gave way to the most basic instinct of survival, a mother's hunger. She knew she wasn't welcome there. She knew her presence bothered people. But the invisible barrier separating her destitution from that opulence needed to be broken. Inside, protected by the soundproof tempered glass and the pleasantly climate-controlled air, sat Lucas Vance, a man of 33, dressed in a suit that cost a small fortune, but whose rigid posture betrayed a tension that no amount of money could resolve. Lucas was the CEO of one of the country's largest real estate development firms. He had the power to erect skyscrapers and change the city's skyline, but he couldn't build a home for himself. His dark, intelligent eyes carried an abyssal emptiness. Lucas stared at the untouched plate of salmon in front of him with an almost offensive disinterest. Around him, couples toasted with crystal glasses, laughed loudly at unfunny jokes, and celebrated superficial achievements. He felt like an outsider. Since the traumatic divorce 2 years earlier, when he discovered he had been financially used by his ex-wife and fake friends, Lucas had closed himself off. He built high walls around his heart. He became cynical, suspicious, diving into work 14 hours a day just to avoid hearing the deafening silence of his empty penthouse. He had everything and felt he had nothing. Lucas's crisis was an internal hemorrhage of purpose, a bleeding of the soul he tried to staunch with multi-million-dollar contracts, without success. It was in this state of apathy, fiddling with his fork without eating, that he noticed the strange movement near the entrance, on the exterior patio covered by an elegant awning. Through the glass, he saw Clara's fragile figure. She was trembling. It wasn't just cold. It was weakness. Lucas watched as she timidly approached a table on the outside, where a well-dressed, gray-haired customer with a wide smile was finishing his dinner. Clara put her hands together in a humble plea. Lucas couldn't hear what she said, but he could read her lips and body language. "Please, sir, are you going to eat that?" The customer glanced around, checking if anyone was watching. With a smile that seemed benevolent, he pushed the plate toward her. There were leftover slices of steak and some risotto. Clara, her eyes welling up with gratitude, took the plate with trembling hands. She didn't even care about the lack of clean utensils. The hunger was urgent. But what happened next made Lucas's blood run cold and then boil. As soon as Clara took the first bite, the scene changed brutally. The customer, perhaps in a sudden desire for a sadistic spectacle to impress the woman he was with, or perhaps regretting being seen interacting with a vagrant, jumped up and started screaming. Lucas saw the man's mouth open in bellowing shouts. He saw the manager, a short, chubby man who prized the exclusionary etiquette of the place over humanity, rush onto the patio. "Thief! Get the thief! She stole this plate from my table while I was distracted," the customer roared, pointing a finger directly into Clara's face. The manager asked no questions. He didn't hesitate. To him, the word of a paying client was gospel, and that of a street woman was less than dirt. He grabbed Clara's thin arm with unnecessary violence, shaking her. The plate fell to the ground, the food scattering on the wet sidewalk, mixing with the grime. Clara tried to protect her belly with her other arm, shrinking back, crying, trying to explain that the food had been given to her. But the accusation, based purely on her dirty appearance and worn clothes, had already echoed through the dining room. People looked on with disgust, judging without knowing. Lucas felt his apathy shatter. The glass that protected him from the world suddenly seemed like a cage. He had witnessed the transaction. He had seen the man offer the plate. He knew the truth. And seeing that pregnant woman humiliated and shaken like that woke up a volcanic indignation in him that he had thought long dead. He rose so abruptly that his chair toppled backward, making a dry sound that silenced the nearby tables. Lucas didn't loo. Back. He strode toward the door with heavy, purposeful steps, a natural authority emanating from his every move. As he opened the glass door and stepped out onto the damp patio, the manager's voice rang out shrilly. "I'm calling the police right now. You'll learn not to bother decent people, you vagrant. Let go of her. Now." Lucas's voice wasn't a shout. It was a command, low, grave, and dangerous, like the growl of a lion before an attack. The manager froze, still holding Clara's arm. He looked at Lucas and recognized the suit, the watch, the posture of a man who commanded. The lying customer also took a step back, losing his arrogant smile. "Mr. Vance?" the manager stammered, trying to manage a nervous smile. "I apologize for the disturbance. This woman trespassed and stole the plate from the gentleman here. I saw everything from inside." Lucas cut in, leveling a glare at the customer. This man offered her the food, and now he's putting on this pathetic show. "And you?" Lucas pointed to the manager's hand still gripping Clara's arm. "If you don't take your hand off her this second, I swear on everything I hold sacred that I will buy this restaurant by morning, simply for the pleasure of firing you for cause and ensuring you never work in this city again." The manager released Clara as if she burned him. The gentleman tried to argue, but Lucas took a step forward, invading his personal space. "Get out of my sight, before I decide to call the police to report an assault against a vulnerable pregnant woman. And trust me, my lawyers are better than yours." The man grabbed his things and hurried away, mumbling apologies, ashamed under the looks of disapproval that now shifted direction. Lucas then turned to Clara. She was leaning against the low wall, trembling uncontrollably. The rain splattered on her, mixing with her tears. She was sobbing, her hands on her belly, terrified. The fear in her eyes was something Lucas would never forget. He felt a tightness in his chest. Giving her money right now would be easy. He could pull out his wallet, hand her $500, and return to his cold dinner. But he looked at her state, at the prominent belly, at the freezing night. The money would be gone tomorrow. The danger would remain. It was an impulsive decision, driven by a protective instinct he hadn't felt since before the divorce. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Lucas asked, his voice now soft, unrecognizable to his employees. "No, I just wanted to eat," she stammered, her voice failing. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll leave." "No, you're not going anywhere in this rain," Lucas said firmly. He took off his Italian tailored jacket and draped it over her wet shoulders. The warmth of the fabric enveloped her. "You're coming with me." Clara's eyes widened, scared. What? No, sir, I can't. I won't hurt you. I have food, I have a dry place. You need to eat, and that baby needs to get out of this cold. Please, trust me. Clara looked into the stranger's eyes. She expected to see pity, that look of poor little thing she hated so much. But she saw something else. She saw resolve. She saw a security she desperately needed. And deep within his dark eyes, she saw a sadness that resonated with her own. Too weak to fight, she nodded. Lucas guided her to his car, a black armored sedan parked out front. The driver opened the door, surprised, but said nothing. Clara entered that world of soft leather and absolute silence, leaving the cold pavement behind and entering a reality she had only seen until then through unreachable windows. The drive to the penthouse was silent. Clara huddled in the corner of the seat, afraid of dirtying the pristine upholstery. Lucas watched the city pass by the window, wondering what he had just done, but feeling no trace of regret. The adjustment to the new reality was a slow process full of contrasts. In the following days, Lucas's minimalist penthouse, with its designer furniture and glass walls, was invaded by Clara's organic presence. He installed her in a guest suite that was larger than her entire previous apartment. He provided clean, comfortable, and warm clothes. The first meal they shared in the house was simple. A hot soup prepared by the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, but to Clara, it tasted like a feast of the gods. Clara moved through the house with extreme caution, stepping lightly, as if at any moment the dream would be revoked and someone would shout, "Wake up!" She tried to be useful in every way. She straightened pillows that were already straight, folded blankets with military precision, and excessively thanked them for every glass of water served. "Clara, you don't need to wash the dishes. We have staff for that," Lucas said, disconcerted, finding her in the kitchen trying to help Mrs. Gable. "It's the least I can do, Mr. Vance. You saved my life," she replied, lowering her eyes. Lucas, accustomed to the impersonal efficiency of his corporate life, found himself adjusting his routine. Before, he stayed at the office until 10 at night. Now he was home by 7. He felt uneasy about leaving her alone in that massive house. He started noticing details he previously ignored. He instructed the central heating to be turned up, asked for fresh fruit to be bought every day, and even, in an unconscious attempt to make the environment less hostile for his guest and the baby, bought a vase of colorful flowers for the living room, breaking the monotony of the gray and black decor. As the weeks passed, the social barrier began to dissolve, giving way to a genuine intimacy, built in the small shared moments of daily life. Lucas insisted they eat dinner together. At first, the silence was awkward, only the sound of silverware tapping porcelain. But gradually, words began to flow. On a Wednesday night, while the rain again beat against the windows, but now they were on the warm side, Clara revealed her story. She spoke of her technical accounting training she had to interrupt, her deep love for her late husband, a simple, hard-working man, and the agonizing pain of watching her dreams crumble brick by brick after his death. "I thought we had control over life, you know?" she said, looking at the juice in her glass. "But we have nothing. One day you have a home. The next, you're invisible." Lucas, disarmed by her raw honesty, felt his own defenses lowering. For the first time in years, he spoke about himself without the mask of the ruthless CEO. He recounted the betrayal he suffered, how his ex-wife and friends only saw a bank account in him. "I have all this here, Clara," he gestured, encompassing the luxurious living room. "But it's a golden cage. I would arrive here, and the silence screamed at me. I thought money solved everything, but it only buys comfort. It doesn't buy peace." Clara listened without judgment. Her eyes held an understanding Lucas had never found in the high society circles. Her gratitude transformed into affectionate care. She started preparing tea for him when he arrived tired. She asked how his day was and truly listened to the answer. She brought a human light into his life, challenging his cynicism with her resilience. Trust grew in the fertile ground of shared vulnerability. They were two castaways from different worlds who found, in each other, an island of safety. The definitive turning point in this relationship occurred one early morning. The house was silent when a muffled cry came from the guest suite. Lucas woke up with a start, his heart pounding. He ran down the corridor, barefoot, and found Clara sitting on the edge of the bed, pale, holding her belly with both hands, her face contorted in pain. "Clara, what is it? Is it the baby?" Lucas asked, panic evident in his voice. He, who managed multimillion-dollar crises without sweating, felt his hands shake. "It hurts so bad. It's hardening," she groaned, afraid. They were strong, frightening Braxton Hicks contractions, but Clara, traumatized by the streets, thought she was losing the baby or going into premature labor. Lucas didn't call Mrs. Gable. He didn't call the driver. He sat down beside her on the bed. "Breathe, Clara. Look at me. Just breathe." He, who always delegated care to others, found himself holding her hand firmly. He began timing the pains on his wristwatch, speaking to her in a low, calm tone, although he was terrified inside. "It'll pass. We are here. I am here." He placed his hand on her belly, feeling the muscle rigidity and, soon after, the vigorous movement of the baby. Life pulsed there, beneath his palm. Warm, real, urgent. When the scare passed and the baby quieted down, Clara leaned back into the pillows, exhausted, covered in cold sweat. She looked at Lucas, squeezing his hand as if he were her anchor to the world. "I was so scared. Scared I wouldn't be able to take care of him. Scared of going back to the street," she confessed, tears streaming down. Lucas looked at that warrior woman and the belly that guarded the future. Something changed inside him at that instant. It was no longer charity. It was no longer pity. It was responsibility. It was affection. "Listen to me, Clara," Lucas said, with a solemnity that made the air in the room thick. "You are never going back to the street, neither you nor this child. As long as I live, you will have a roof and protection. I promise." There was the birth of a familial bond there, not of blood, but profoundly spiritual. Lucas touched Clara's belly once more, feeling a small kick against his fingers. For the first time in years, he smiled with teary eyes. The emptiness in his chest had vanished. They were connected. Her life was now part of his, and his was irrevocably transformed by hers. But what Lucas and Clara didn't know, there, in that moment of fragile peace in the guest suite, was that happiness causes offense. And it causes a lot of offense. The storm outside had passed, but a much worse tempest was brewing far away, driven by prejudice and greed, ready to test just how far that promise Lucas had just made would go. So tell me, would you have been brave enough to take Clara in, relying only on intuition? Can their fledgling connection survive the ultimate test? Let us know in the comments below what you would do, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the firestorm coming up next. The mother is here, and trust me, she doesn't play nice. The promise made that rainy dawn, sealed with Lucas's hand on Clara's belly, seemed to have created a force field around that house. In the days that followed, the penthouse, previously a cold design mausoleum of lonely echoes, began to breathe. A routine established itself with a sweetness Lucas hadn't known. In the morning, he no longer woke up to a blaring alarm and the anxiety of checking the stock market. He woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and homemade blueberry muffins. A simple recipe Clara insisted on teaching the cook, Mrs. Gable, who in turn was delighted by the guest's humility. Lucas would descend the stairs and find Clara on the balcony, enjoying the morning sun, talking to her belly. The sight of her there, her skin regaining color, her hair clean and shining, made his heart beat at a different rhythm. It wasn't the overwhelming passion of a teenager. It was something calmer, like finally coming home after a long journey. He began insisting on taking her to her prenatal appointments. The first time they walked into the office of the city's most renowned obstetrician, there were curious glances in the waiting room. A man in an Italian suit accompanying a woman who, despite the new clothes he had bought, still carried the shyness of someone who had begged for change in her eyes. But Lucas held her hand with such ownership that the whispers died before they could start. It was at one of these appointments, hearing the baby's heart during the ultrasound, that the final barrier fell. The galloping sound, fast and strong, filled the darkened room. Lucas looked at the monitor, saw the baby's profile, and a solitary tear ran down his face. "She has a little button nose," Clara joked, her voice choked. "Just like her dad." Lucas squeezed her hand. He knew she spoke of her late husband, but in that moment he felt like that child's father. The moral commitment he had assumed was transforming into unconditional love. At home, the nights were filled with long conversations. Lucas talked about his architectural projects, how he wanted to build buildings that embraced people instead of isolating them. Clara talked about her interrupted dreams, how she liked numbers and organization. "When the baby is born and you've recovered," Lucas said one night, serving her chamomile tea, "I want you to work with me." "The firm. You have a head for finance, Clara. It doesn't have to be charity. You have talent." Clara cried, not from sadness, but because, for the first time in years, someone saw more in her than a womb or an outstretched hand. They saw a capable woman. Happiness, however, is often the prelude to envy. And the force field protecting the house had one flaw: the front door. On a Thursday afternoon, the electronic gate opened for a luxurious, imposing silver car. Out of it stepped Cecilia Vance, Lucas's mother, a woman in her 60s who fought against time with plastic surgery and a general's demeanor. Cecilia came from a traditional lineage, one of those who believe that surname is more important than character and that poverty is, in some way, a moral failing. She had a key to the apartment. She entered without ringing the bell, her high heels clicking on the marble floor of the entrance hall. The scene she found caused her nausea. Lucas was sitting on the sofa, reading documents, while Clara, with her swollen feet propped on a cushion, folded baby clothes they had just bought. They were laughing about something. The laughter died as soon as Cecilia cleared her throat. "Mother!" Lucas stood up, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming." Cecilia ignored her son and focused her cold, appraising eyes on Clara. She scanned the young woman up and down, noting the belly, the comfortable clothes, the intimacy of the scene. "I came to surprise you, but I see the surprise is mine," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I didn't know we had visitors. Or would this be charity?" Clara tried to stand up, awkward with the weight of her pregnancy. "Mrs. Vance, nice to meet you. I'm Clara." Cecilia didn't extend her hand. She merely nodded slightly with calculated disdain. "Clara, I see. Lucas, may we speak in your study?" Now, that was the first crack in the glass. In the days that followed, Cecilia installed herself in the apartment with the excuse that she missed her son. But her mission was clear: extermination. She didn't attack Clara directly in front of Lucas. Cecilia was smarter and more venomous than that. She acted in the shadows, in the silences. When Lucas left for work, she made subtle comments to Clara. "You know this is temporary, don't you, dear?" she would say, sipping her bitter coffee. "Lucas has a soft spot. He loves collecting injured animals. It was the same with his ex-wife. But later, he tires. Men like him need women of stature. You wouldn't want to disrupt his life, would you?" Clara, fragile from hormones and the imposter syndrome that never entirely left her, absorbed every word like a toxin. She began to retreat. She spent more time in the bedroom. The glow she had regained started to fade. But Cecilia knew words weren't enough. Lucas was infatuated with the idea of family, and she needed proof to destroy that. That's when she hired the detective, a ruthless man who knew exactly what his client wanted to hear. He dug into Clara's life and her late husband's. He discovered that Clara's husband, before he died, had taken out a substantial business loan to try and save a small family business, a debt that fell to Clara and caused the eviction. Cecilia took this information and distorted it masterfully. One night, she called Lucas to the study and dropped a file onto the desk. "I did this for your own good, son. You are blind." Lucas read the papers. There were records of debts, of court-ordered collections. "What is this, mother?" "This proves she and her husband were compulsive debtors. Grifters, Lucas. She isn't here because you saved her. She saw you as the golden goose to pay off past debts. It's a pattern. She gets close, gets pregnant or uses the pregnancy to gain pity, and then takes everything. That's ridiculous, Lucas retorted, but his voice wavered. The seed of doubt had been planted. Lucas's trauma with his ex-wife, who had used him for money, was an open wound that Cecilia knew exactly where to poke. Could it be? A voice whispered in his mind. Am I just an ATM to her? The atmosphere in the house changed. The air grew heavy. Lucas started arriving home later from work, avoiding dinners. When he looked at Clara, he no longer saw only sweetness. He saw suspicion. And Clara, sensitive as glass, noticed the change. The fear of returning to the street, which had been dormant, woke up roaring. The final blow came on a rainy Friday, mirroring the day they met. Lucas owned a collection of watches, and his favorite piece was a Patek Philippe inherited from his grandfather, valued at over $200,000. He kept it in a glass case in his walk-in closet. That morning, Cecilia entered her son's room while he was showering. Wearing thin gloves, she took the watch. She didn't steal it. She merely hid it. She tucked it deep into an ornamental plant vase in the hallway, far from suspicion, but accessible. By nightfall, chaos had broken out. Lucas frantically searched for the watch. He had an important business dinner. He tore through the closet, the drawers. Nothing. Mother, did you see my grandfather's watch? He asked, coming down the stairs, his tie undone. Cecilia was in the living room, reading a magazine with glacial composure. The gold one? No, dear. But... She paused dramatically. I did see Clara leaving your room this morning, while the maid was cleaning the hall. I thought it was strange, but I didn't want to comment. Lucas's blood ran cold. The image of Clara's debts, planted days earlier, exploded in his mind. Debts, desperation, opportunity. He ran up the stairs, his heart pounding with a mixture of fury and disappointment. He found Clara in the guest suite, reading a book on motherhood that he himself had bought. She smiled when she saw him, a shy smile, trying to reconnect the bridge she felt was broken. Hi, Lucas. You're home early. Lucas didn't smile. He stopped at the door, hands in his pockets, his posture rigid. Clara, did you go into my room today? The question was dry, cutting. Clara frowned, confused. No, I don't go in there unless you're present. Why? My watch is missing. My grandfather's watch. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara felt the air leave her lungs. She understood immediately what was happening. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation in disguise. You think I took it? Her voice was a thread. I didn't say that, Lucas replied, but he avoided her gaze. And it was that deflection that killed Clara inside. If he had shouted, she could defend herself. But he hesitated. He doubted her. After everything they had shared, after touching her belly, after promising protection. The first thing he did when faced with suspicion was to believe she was the thief, the beggar, the opportunist. My mother said she saw you leaving there, Lucas added, a fatal error. Clara rose slowly. The physical pain of the pregnancy was nothing compared to the pain of that moral betrayal. I didn't take anything, Lucas. I would never take anything of yours. I thought you knew me. If you didn't take it, there's no problem, he said, trying to backtrack, realizing the damage, but his pride and his mother's manipulation prevented him from apologizing. We'll find it. Just, if you needed money, Clara, for an old debt, you could have asked me. That was the end. He had believed the debt story. He saw her as a financial problem, not a human being. I don't want your money, she said, with a dignity that made him feel small. I just wanted a safe place. But this isn't safe. This is cold. Colder than the street. Lucas left the room, confused, irritated, and manipulated. He went down to the study and locked himself in, drinking whiskey, trying to silence the voice screaming that he was making a terrible mistake. In the dead of night, while the rain lashed the penthouse, Clara made her decision. She couldn't stay in a home where she was seen as a thief. Her soul had no price. She took a sheet of paper from the notebook she used to write down baby items. She wrote a few lines, her handwriting trembling. She didn't take the expensive clothes he had given her. She put on her old dress, washed and mended, and the jacket he had given her on the first night. The only item she took, as she needed to protect the baby from the cold. She put on her worn-out sneakers. She descended the stairs like a ghost. The house was dark. She left the note on the living room coffee table, next to the plant vase where, ironically, the watch rested hidden in the damp soil. She opened the front door. The cold wind hit her face, but she didn't flinch. Clara walked into the darkness, the rain, and the world that had chewed her up and spat her out so many times. She was alone again, nearly 9 months pregnant, without money, without direction, but with a clear conscience. Lucas woke up hours later, with a tight feeling in his chest, a bad premonition that made him sweat cold. The house was too quiet. He got up and went to the guest suite. The bed was made, untouched. The closet with the new clothes was full. "Clara?" he called, panic beginning to rise in his throat. He ran downstairs. He saw the front door unlocked. And then he saw the paper on the table. He picked up the note. It read, "Mr. Vance, thank you for showing me that goodness exists, even if it's fleeting. I did not take your watch. My debts were about trying to save the life of someone I loved. Not a scam. You gave me shelter, but you stole my honor when you doubted me. Money buys everything but truth. Take care. Clara." Lucas felt his legs give way. He fell to his knees on the living room rug. At that moment, Cecilia descended the stairs, in a silk robe, with a thinly veiled expression of triumph. "What happened, dear? Did she leave? I told you she wouldn't withstand the pressure once she was exposed." "Good riddance." Lucas didn't answer. He was staring at the plant vase next to the table. Something glittered there, half buried in the soft soil, perhaps revealed when Clara brushed the table leaving the note. The golden glint of the Patek Philippe watch. Lucas reached out a trembling hand and pulled the watch from the dirt. Dirty with soil, hidden in a place no one would put it by accident. He looked at the watch. He looked at his mother. And comprehension descended upon him like an anvil. There was no theft. There was only malice. "You?" Lucas whispered, getting up, the watch in his hand and tears of hatred and regret in his eyes. "You planted this. You drove her out." Cecilia recoiled, losing her composure for the first time. "I protected my assets. I protected you. You destroyed the only real thing I had." Lucas screamed, a shout that made the glass chandelier tremble. He looked at the window. The storm outside was violent. Lightning cut across the sky. Clara was out there, somewhere about to give birth, alone, unprotected, expelled because of his cowardice in trusting his own intuition. Lucas ran for the door, ignoring his mother's screams. He jumped into his car, tires screeching, heading out into the dark, dangerous night. But the city is a cruel labyrinth. Where would she be? How long had she been gone? Every minute in that rain was a life-threatening risk for her and the baby. Lucas drove, blinded by tears, pounding the steering wheel, screaming her name into the fogged glass. The powerful man, the untouchable CEO, was reduced to a rag of guilt. He had everything, and he had just lost everything that mattered. And out there, in the darkness, Clara felt the first real contraction. A pain that doubled her over, in the middle of a deserted street, far from any hospital, far from any help. Her water broke, mixing with the rainwater on the dirty sidewalk. The question remains, will Lucas's crippling regret save them? Or is the cost of his doubt too high? Type redemption if you think Lucas deserves a second chance, or justice if he should face the consequences of his actions. Like and subscribe now, because the climax of this story, and the shocking location of the birth, is about to drop. The rain fell like a lead curtain over the city, turning the streets into rivers of mud and oil. Inside the armored car, the silence was broken only by the frantic sound of the wipers and Lucas's ragged breathing. He drove aimlessly, guided only by desperation and the memory of places where he had seen homeless people take shelter in the past. "Where are you, Clara? For God's sake, where are you?" he muttered, pounding the steering wheel. The image of the watch stained with dirt in his mother's hands burned in his mind. That object, once a symbol of heritage and status, now represented the greatest shame of his life. He had traded the loyalty of an honest woman for the manipulation of a mother who never knew how to love without conditions. Lucas turned a sharp corner, the tires squealing on the wet asphalt. He was near the old railway station, a place avoided by the elite, but a refuge for the forgotten. His xenon headlights cut through the darkness and illuminated. For a brief second, a figure huddled beneath the awning of a defunct furniture store. Lucas's heart stopped and then started beating at a painful rhythm. It was her. He slammed on the brakes in the middle of the street, regardless of oncoming traffic. He unlocked the door and ran out into the rain. The cold water soaked his linen shirt in seconds, but he didn't feel it. Clara! She was sitting on the cold ground, her back against the store's steel door. Hearing his voice, she tried to shrink further, as if she wanted to disappear. But her body wouldn't obey. Clara moaned, biting her lip until it bled. "Go away," she whispered, her voice weak, punctuated by a cry of pain. "Leave me alone." Lucas knelt in the dirty puddle next to her. He saw her contorted face, the sweat mixed with the rain, and looked down. The water around her was tinged with blood and fluid. "The baby," Lucas choked. "Clara, is the baby coming? She wants to be born now," she cried, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. "There's no time. It hurts so much, Lucas." Panic tried to take over. He was a CEO, a man of spreadsheets and meetings, not a medic. But looking at the terror in her eyes, the terror of someone who thinks she's going to die alone in the gutter, the businessman disappeared. Only the man remained. "You are not staying here. I won't allow it." He didn't ask. He slipped his arms underneath her and lifted her. She was too light, too fragile, except for the weight of the life she carried. Clara screamed when a new contraction hit her mid-movement, but Lucas held her tight against his chest, running for the car. He placed her in the back seat, the beige leather immediately staining with mud and blood. Lucas climbed in with her, closing the door, isolating them from the noise of the storm. The silence of the armored car was filled with Clara's groans. Lucas grabbed his cell phone, his hands shaking so much he could barely dial. He called 911 and put it on speakerphone. "I have a pregnant woman in active labor. We're on the street. There's no time to get to the hospital." "Sir, stay calm," the operator's voice said. "I need you to check if you can see the baby's head." Lucas looked at Clara. She was lying awkwardly on the seat, her legs drawn up, her face bathed in tears. "Lucas, I don't have the strength," she sobbed. He held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. "Clara, listen. Forget the watch. Forget my mother. Forget everything. Right now, it's just us two and your daughter. You are the strongest woman I've ever met. You survived hunger, cold, humiliation. This is life. And you are going to bring her into the world. I am here. I won't let go of your hand." His words, laden with a visceral truth, seemed to anchor her. Clara nodded, breathing deeply. I see the head," Lucas yelled into the phone, following the instructions. What followed were the 30 longest, most intense minutes of Lucas's life. There, in the back seat of a luxury car worth more than a house, etiquette, money, and pride were meaningless. Lucas stripped off his expensive jacket to line the seat. He rolled up his sleeves and, guided by the voice on the phone and human instinct, became a midwife. "Push, Clara. One more time. For our girl. Come on," he said without realizing it. And Clara, hearing that, found a reserve of energy that came from her soul. She screamed, a primal sound of supreme effort, and pushed. Lucas caught the child. The small, slippery, warm body slid into his hands. There was a second of absolute silence. The world stopped. and then a vigorous, loud, indignant cry exploded inside the car, competing with the thunder outside. "She's born?" Lucas laughed and cried at the same time, the tears falling onto the baby's face. "It's a girl, Clara. She's perfect." He placed the baby on Clara's chest and covered both of them with his own body and his jacket, protecting them from the cold air conditioning and the world. Clara looked at her daughter, tiny and purple, and then at Lucas. He was covered in blood, disheveled, his shirt ruined, and he had never looked so handsome, so real. "You stayed," she whispered, exhausted. "I'm never leaving again," he promised, kissing her sweaty forehead. Never again. The arrival at the hospital was a blur of lights and running doctors. But Lucas refused to let them take her away without him. While Clara and the baby were being attended to, he remained in the corridor, refusing to go home to change. He wanted everyone to see the blood on his shirt. It was his medal of honor and his reminder of guilt. It was there, sitting in the VIP waiting area, that his phone rang. It was Cecilia. Lucas answered. His voice was calm, a chilling and definitive calm. "Son, where are you? Dinner is cold and—" "It's over, Mother," Lucas interrupted her. "What's over? What are you talking about? Did you find that tramp? Don't call my daughter's mother that." His tone silenced Cecilia on the other end of the line. "Clara just gave birth. In my car. Because you drove her out of the house with your lies. Lucas, I did this to protect you. That watch, the watch you hid." Lucas laughed, a humorless sound. "You know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to sell it. And I'm donating every penny to charity. And as for you—" He paused, feeling the weight of years of manipulation fall from his shoulders. "I'll send for my things from your house, or you can send for yours from mine. It doesn't matter. What matters is that starting today, Clara and this child are my family. And anyone who doesn't respect them has no place in my life. Don't call me Mother. Don't come to the hospital. If you do, security has orders to bar you. Goodbye." He hung up and blocked the number. For the first time, the silence that followed wasn't loneliness, but peace. Hours later, Lucas entered the hospital room. Clara was clean, wearing a light blue gown, with the baby sleeping in an acrylic bassinet beside her. She looked like a tired queen. Lucas approached the bed, feeling unworthy to be there. "How is she?" he asked, pointing to the baby. "Good. She's strong. Weighs 7 pounds, even being a little premature." Lucas pulled up a chair and sat down. He needed to speak. He needed to clear the air. "Clara, I have no words to ask for forgiveness. I was a coward. I let my mother's poison and my past traumas blind me to what I felt. When I saw that note, when I saw the watch in the dirt, I felt like I was dying." He took her hand, resting on the sheet. "I accused you of the lowest thing, right after promising to protect you. I broke your trust, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to fix it, if you let me." Clara looked at him. She saw genuine regret. She saw the man who had delivered her daughter with his own hands, without disgust, without hesitation. She knew what human malice was, but she also knew how to recognize when someone was truly trying to change. "The street teaches you to be tough, Lucas," she said softly. "But it also teaches you that nobody survives alone. You made a huge mistake. It hurt, but you came back. You came out in the rain." She squeezed his hand back. "I don't want your money, Lucas. I never did. But I want a father for her. And I want a partner who trusts me. If we're going to try again, there can be no secrets. There can't be my house and the guest room. It has to be us." "Us?" Lucas repeated, as if it were the most sacred word in the world. "I promise. Total transparency. Total respect. And my mother, she won't touch us again." "And what will her name be?" Clara asked, looking at the bassinet. Lucas smiled, remembering the moment in the car. "Victory, because she overcame the storm. And so did we." Epilogue. 2 years passed since that stormy night. The Sunday sun illuminated the garden of the penthouse, which no longer looked like a cold architectural magazine set piece. There was a colorful swing hanging from the old tree, and toys scattered across the perfectly manicured lawn. Lucas was sitting on the patio, watching. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore shorts and a t-shirt, barefoot, with a relaxed expression his former employees would never recognize. The development firm was doing well, but he had delegated much of the workload. His priority was now elsewhere. On the lawn, Clara chased a little girl with curly hair and an easy laugh. Victory ran fast, tripping over her own feet and getting up alone, resilient like her mother. Clara was radiant. She had finished her technical course and now managed the financial side of the couple's new venture, the Victory Foundation. The organization operated in a building renovated by Lucas's firm, sheltering pregnant women experiencing homelessness, offering not just food and shelter, but professional training and dignity. They transformed the pain of the past into hope for hundreds of women. Lucas got up and walked toward them. Victory, upon seeing him, screamed, "Daddy!" and ran into his arms. He lifted her, spinning her in the air, smelling the sun and baby scent that was now his favorite perfume. Clara approached and hugged them both. Lucas kissed his wife, a calm kiss full of certainty. "Can you believe your mother called the office today?" Clara commented, without bitterness in her voice. "She tried to talk to your secretary. Let her call." Lucas shrugged, unbothered. "She made her choices. We made ours." He looked at his family. The empty former CEO, who dined alone surrounded by luxury and silence, was dead. In his place lived a fulfilled man, who had understood in the hardest, but most definitive, way that true wealth neither shines like gold nor ticks like a Swiss watch. True wealth was right there, in those arms, built on forgiveness, cemented in truth, and covered in love. The story that began with an unjust accusation of theft ended with the realization that the only real theft was of each other's hearts, now irremediably intertwined forever. And so ends our story, folks. Proof that love and truth always find a way, even on the darkest, rainiest nights. What did you think of Lucas's ultimate choice? Would you have forgiven him like Clara did? Comment Victory if you believe love can truly transform, or Consequence if you feel Cecilia deserved harsher punishment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this incredible journey of second chances.